Hi, everyone, and welcome to our pre-conference session for the HIP 2020 Virtual Summit. My name is Hilda Vega, and I work with Hispanics in Philanthropy. I'm the Deputy Director of Programs, and I am going to hand it off right now to Amalia Brindes Delgado, who will be doing a formal welcome for everyone. Thank you.
Buenos días, buenas tardes. Hi, everyone. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining our conversation today. It's so good to see so many of you on the line and here for our conversation on understanding complexity through storytelling lessons from worker justice and Venezuelan mass migration. Just a reminder, this session will be recorded. I know we'll have folks joining us as we start our conversation. And in the meantime, I'll start with a welcome and some information about the work that HIP is doing and pass it over to Hilda and my colleague Jazz to provide introductions and get us going. So as we start the pre-summit events, I wanted to first recognize the very complex context that we are living in and the hurt and despair of folks across the country, witnessing deep injustices on multiple fronts: police brutality, the 100,000 plus COVID deaths that are impacting our communities, Black and Brown folks disproportionately impacted, and the reverberating financial and emotional impact that that is having on us. The same systems that killed George Floyd is systems that are putting kids and have put kids in cages and that are preventing Venezuelans and other migrants from leaving their countries, fleeing starvation, persecution, and now a global health crisis. And so while Latino workers in the US have been held up as essential, in food production especially, they are starving and struggling now more than ever. While people in power may shape narratives that blame and attack everyone, but those perpetrating systemic violence and injustice, this moment now calls for a deep transition for just systems and societies. Narrative change starts by telling personal stories and the ability to put faces to those injustices. It gives us a sense of connection and shared values to address what are otherwise large nebulous issues. And it helps us to focus on what must be done. So I thought I'd start by telling my story. My family left Venezuela when I was just 6 years old. And for the first time in 35 years since we left, we are experiencing the forced migration of the rest of my family. Like the 5 million other Venezuelans leaving our home country, we have folks all over the world. And you know, starting my career as an immigration lawyer 25 years ago, I never imagined that I would now be working in response to Venezuelan refugee crisis. And so what has triggered now the largest external displacement in Latin America's recent history, we're seeing not only forced migration throughout the Americas of Venezuelans, but it's compacted by what's happening with the global pandemic. Venezuelans are living in deplorable conditions, refugee camps that are next to closed border points and overcrowded shelters if you're lucky, and compacted with the impact of COVID-19, a diminished economy, tightened immigration enforcement. The challenges are sky high, and philanthropy and receiving governments are not doing enough. My cousin Miji, who has the biggest smile in the world, is now in Chile with her young husband and daughter. They fled there a few months ago, and her husband, who worked in the Patagonia as a chef, now is in Santiago with Miji, and without work, without the ability to apply for asylum, and facing an uncertain future. Similarly, my cousin Jose Antonio fled, taking several buses through Venezuela to cross the border into Brazil, and in time to arrive in Belen, where there's seasonal flooding and a quarantine. My cousin Lehil, who stays in Venezuela to take care of my 92-year-old grandmother, faces regular shortages of gas, electricity, and basic services. And so they're living day to day, often forced to cook arepas in a wood stove outside. It's mind-boggling to me that they're continuing to survive. However, she can't leave Venezuela because of my grandmother's state. And she tells me, she says, I see and I hear how Venezuelan people are being treated and thought of outside of Venezuela, and I am so afraid of what will happen to me. So with US imposed sanctions and an existing inflation rate of 10 million%, this makes sending remittances to Venezuela almost impossible. And now my family, we're not only just supporting my grandmother, but we're supporting about 20 other people who'd rely on my mother and my sole support. And so what we did, we launched a GoFundMe page to raise money to send to our friends and families. However, GoFundMe has blocked our release of payments. We raised $5,000, and they're concerned that those dollars will go to Venezuela and violate US sanctions. So our hands are tied in terms of how we can support our family inside of Venezuela. The narrative of Venezuelans in places like Chile and Colombia has changed over time, where Venezuelans were once thought of as coming from the economic and cultural center of Venezuela, leading soap operas, and now similar to the narrative that we hear from about other migrants as being undeserving and squandering precious resources and endangering public safety. The time is now to move towards greater action, especially within the philanthropic center. What we've seen is a limited in financial support for Venezuelan migrants. Roughly $125 per person has been granted in aid versus the $1,500 per Syrian refugees, as stated by a Brookings Institute report. Not enough for either population, but the shortages for Venezuelans are really clear. And new commitments that were just made in the Solidarity Summit, only a portion is made in donations from, and what we're seeing is that philanthropic sector is not stepping up. We can begin to influence action and support for how, based on how people understand these issues and how the narrative is shaped around this. So one, how do we bring awareness to this invisible refugee population? And two, how do we instigate support? And in addition to that, and what we'll be focusing in this conversation is thinking about our essential workers, another important population here in the US and across the Americas, and thinking about how do we keep attention to what suddenly has been a recognition for their importance in this pandemic response, and not only lifting up their value, but over time ensuring that they are rewarded with the conditions and the pay that they deserve. The value of sharing stories and centering lived experience in this time, and it always is essential. I'm grateful for the work of our panelists to inform and shape this narrative, and I'm looking forward to their guidance as we work through these questions. So thanks so much for everybody who's joined. My name is Amalia Brindes Delgado. I'm the Associate Vice President of Strategy here at Hispanics in Philanthropy. Welcome to our pre-summit event. And before I turn it over to our moderator, I'm going to tell you a little bit about HIP, and I'll tell you a little bit about the work that we're doing on migration as part of our work, and that will be covered over the course of the conference, and then turn it over to Jess to introduce our panelists. So Hispanics in Philanthropy is on the mission to strengthen Latino leadership, influence, and equity by leveraging philanthropic resources, making impactful investments in the community, and developing our leaders so that they can effectively address the most pressing issues impacting communities in the US, Latin America, and the Caribbean. Our forced migration and displacement program is part of the work that HIP is doing to further this. And what we do this through regranting and capacity building resources, funder mobilization, building bridges across sectors, and narrative change work. Our conversation is part of collaborative efforts to change the narrative of how our communities in general should be centered in their lived experience and to drive local solutions. Conversations are also part of thinking about how do we mobilize support for Venezuelans across the region, as well as other migrant and refugee populations. In the next few weeks, we'll be launching a fund to support Venezuelan refugees and migrants and the organizations that are leading the response for this population to address health, economic, and other impacts of COVID. My colleague, Hilda, will later share a little bit more about the work that we're doing. We are also in the process of launching another fund, the Essential Fund, which will support workers and the organizations that are responding to their needs and have close ties to the community in order to make sure that the recovery relief is there in this moment. So please touch base with me if you'd like to know more. We've raised half of what we've aspired to raise on our $3 million goal for the Essential Fund. We raised about 1.7 million on this fund. And so without further ado, I turn it over to my colleague, Jasmine Chavez, Associate Vice President of Public Affairs, to start our conversations on strategies for solutions in the use of elevating voices and storytelling. Jazz, I turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. Buenos dias. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great, Jazz.
Okay, perfect. All right, we're going to get started then. All right, so thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. I'm really excited to have you all here. As Amalia said, my name is Jasmine Chavez, and I'm the Associate Vice President of Public Affairs for Hispanics and Philanthropy. And it is a pleasure to be with all of you here this morning. I will give you a warning, my daughter might jump in. So if you see a little person, just keep the show rolling. It's all good. Thank you so much, Amalia, for that awesome intro. I really want to be able to really jump into the work, especially right now as we're seeing everything play out really across the country, and we're able to see really how important it is to be able to control our own narrative, and the importance of us being able to tell our story in the correct way. And so I think it's no surprise as we're coming out of this weekend, just the importance of us being able to kind of sit through this moment and understand, what does it mean for us? What does it mean for us collectively as a community? What does it mean for us on a global scale? And really who, and even as all of you have seen the coverage come out of this weekend, who is telling our stories? How are they telling it? And why does it matter? At Hispanics and Philanthropy, part of our narrative change work is really focused on creating a narrative that is based out of finding a shared value, and being able to scale empathy together and find the common denominator that allows us to be able to really scale that empathy collectively. We do that also by really focusing the stories around it's human-centered storytelling. So really focusing it on the people, making folks understand that this isn't a singular issue, this isn't a singular thing that's impacting one person, but it's a collective thing. And then also really bringing to light the organizations that are doing this really, really powerful work. So thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here with Carlos, Patricia, Lala, as well as Ana. I just want to jump right in. So I want to start first with Carlos Beltran, who is a journalist, producer, and director. Buenos días, Carlos. How are you doing this morning?
Very good. Locked down, isolated, but very good.
Good. Yeah, if we can, Carlos, I think with you as a journalist, I think it's so just vital in terms of someone who is in the field, who understands the importance of shaping narratives and telling these stories, and also just in really examining the work that you've been doing as well with some of the videos that you've been able to produce, and also just being able to really connect the realities that we're seeing that have come out of Venezuela, but also tying it to like a larger migrant work and kind of like this larger migrant journeys that we're seeing, and also even to what we're seeing play out in the US today.
Yes. Oh, thank you again for the introduction. I have to take just a second to thank HIP, Hispanics in Philanthropy, all the work that you folks are doing to not only talk about, but act on the region in the Americas. It means a lot. And also, I have to say, it's a privilege to be side to side with Patricia Velázquez and Lara Lovera, two powerful Venezuelan women whose work I very much admire, and Ana, of course, who joined the panel. This is interesting, and I'm really glad that we're talking, because I have to acknowledge every single person who's joining the conversation. We are going through, of course, we know this, very difficult times. I think that's part of the introduction of every meeting that we're having right now, is acknowledging the tough times. There are hundreds of thousands of families all over the world right now who are lost someone to the pandemic, or millions of families in the US alone who have lost their jobs recently, who for the first time, maybe ever, are coming face to face with financial strain, hunger, desperation. So I have an immense sense of gratitude for everyone who's here right now, willing to think about and talk about a country and a people whose everyday reality for years has been that of crisis, hunger, desperation, and exile. So you were talking about my stories, and as a journalist, yes, I've spent more than a decade covering Venezuela. From the inside out, of always striving, of course, to the best of my abilities, to tell stories that do justice to those who otherwise would remain invisible, or at best turn into a mere number or statistic. And as a Venezuelan journalist, the stories I've told are deeply personal. I have family, of course, and close friends who have migrated, not to say escaped, the crisis in Venezuela. So when I cover social, economic, political issues in my own country, I do it thinking of every single person I've met and every experience I've had with those who have been affected by the crisis. Since I'm a documentary filmmaker and this platform allows me to share audio and video with you folks, I'd rather show you than to tell you about these stories. So I want to share you a first clip over here. It's from a documentary that I directed back in 2018, 2019 with NBC News. So here you'll see that I don't really focus on numbers or statistics that much, but rather in 3.5 minutes, I believe you'll be able to experience to an extent the plight and suffering of millions of families who have been torn apart by the crisis. You'll see a conversation between a young Venezuelan man in exile in New York and his parents who are still in Venezuela. So I'll try to do this, and bear with me while I pull up the clip over here. Feel free to call me out if there's no audio.
I'm not getting any audio.
No audio, anybody?
No audio.
Okay, well, that's a shame. See, I knew there was going to be something over here. All right, let's see something over here. I'm going to try just streaming it then and see if that does it for me. Share. In a country where more than 80% of families live under the poverty line, partly because of rampant hyperinflation, saving money is an impossible task. Thanks to Willie's help, though, his parents were finally able to buy a smartphone, and they're going to surprise him with a video call. They haven't seen each other's faces in over a year.
Aló.
Aló.
Hola.
Hola.
Uy.
¿Sí me oye, pelo lindo?
Estoy espelucado.
¿Te gusta?
Papi. Te agarro. Hacete cariño.
Ahí sí me ve. Ahí sí me ve. ¿Cómo está vida?
Ay, estoy bien. Tocando.
Está llorando.
Yo te voy a comprar tus gotas, mami.
Estamos bien, estamos bien. Estamos bien, bien.
Los amo. Ay, porque quiero que tengan su casa. Yo estoy bien, yo estoy de maravilla. Tú no me estás viendo lo bello que estoy yo.
Te extrañamos mucho, viejito.
Pero te vamos a estar juntos, papi.
Sí, vamos a estar juntos en un apartamento allá, así como yo aquí. Tengo hasta peluche, me tienen peluche.
Sí, ya vimos. Ya vimos.
Los amo, los amo. Les mandé para mercado, compré en mercado, en la cuenta de mi mamá.
Mira, ¿sabes que no nos llamas otra vez, oíste?
Ya, cortó.
Sí quisiera que estuvieran mejor, pues. Así como yo, ¿sabes? Pero no es culpa mía que ellos no estén mejor.
Okay, can you guys hear me again?
Yes.
So just like that young man, on a personal level, I'm not sure when I'll get to see my family again, my mother, who still lives in Venezuela. And I am sure that many of you who are listening here today can, in one way or another, relate to that reality. Now, I don't want to run over my time. The next clip I decided to share for contrast focuses on my work as a journalist, giving context, numbers, and statistics for a broad audience to understand the magnitude of the Venezuelan migration crisis. I'll only share just about a minute of it. Let me do that again. Sorry about that. Let me see. Not that. Sorry. Oh boy. Stop share. There we go. Oh. Sorry, guys. I need to find where that thing went. All right, there you go. Don't think that's, oh, here we go. I'm gonna quit this. And unfortunately, because I'm not tech savvy, I have no idea where my thing went. But all right, let me see if I can actually figure this out. No.
Don't worry,
So,
Carlos.
anyways,
We have
I don't know if
time,
you
so
guys,
take your time.
You guys can hear me? No?
Yeah.
Oh, you
We
guys
can
can
hear
hear me,
you.
but it's playing something else. All right, here, let me do this.
Do you want me to? I can launch it, then you can cue it up. Sound good?
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me now or no?
Yes,
Shoot.
we can hear you.
All right. Nothing, right? No audio? No audio?
We can hear you, and Hilda's going to launch the
Sorry,
video
guys,
for
no
you.
audio. I can't hear. Oh, here we go. I can hear you now. I can hear you now. Sorry about that. And I believe you guys cannot or could not hear anything, or maybe you heard a little too much about something else. But I'm not going to run over this too much, but here, let me see. Let's see if I can actually find that clip, and I don't think I will, but.
Carlos, I have it ready if you want me to go.
You do?
ahead and
Okay, thank you.
share.
Yes, please. Oh my gosh, I forgot that you had it.
No worries. Hold on.
Guess we'll have to edit this out.
I can't hear it.
Yeah, it's kind of laggy. All right.
We can share. Can we share the link
Sure.
on the chat for all
Sure,
the
absolutely.
participants?
Absolutely. So basically, just to finish up, and of course, technology was going to do this to me, but so basically, on that video, I produced also for NBC News, and as I've done with plenty of other networks, I focus on giving a broader audience that wouldn't normally be aware of the situation in Venezuela, more of a focus on the numbers, right? A country of some 32 million people, 10% of that country since 2014 leaving. I've done videos when I literally placed Venezuela on the map, explaining that it borders with Colombia and Brazil. And that video I produced, the one that I try to share with you folks, produced in 2019, when we were reporting, it had been years of this happening. We were reporting this mass migration of Venezuelans on foot from anywhere in the country through the Colombian border. So, and again, I do this just to put it into contrast. Like, as a Venezuelan journalist, I try to focus both on numbers to give context, but also try to universalize stories so that people, no matter where they live or who they are, we can all relate with, or to that family, and to some extent from the first clip of the documentary. So even though I live in New York and I call US my second home, having lived here for almost more than half my life, my goal is to spend the rest of my career holding Venezuela up high and raising awareness, doing my best as a storyteller to keep Venezuelan voices heard. So yeah, I don't want to run over. I don't know if that took me over the 15-minute mark or not, but thank you for listening.
No, you're perfectly fine, Carlos. And I mean, I think even the one video we did see was incredibly powerful in terms of, as you talked about, how is it that we can at least, everybody could see themselves in that video, right? Like the values of family, the values of, I'm a Mexican immigrant myself, of being able to provide back. And I think even understanding his pain of like, well, I'm trying my hardest to help my family, and the pressure, right? Like that pressure. And Amalia, you had talked about it earlier. Carlos, you're talking about it too. And I think as we talk with Patricia, Lala, and Ana as well, like that pressure of being the children and daughters, sons of our countries, to be able to keep them up high, but also, also tell the stories of how it's impacting in a transnational way. So even though we just saw that one video, I think it was such a powerful video in the power of storytelling. So thank you so much. And technology will be with us, will not be with us. We'll see how it goes. But thank you, Carlos, so much. And we're going to circle back with you in just a little bit, but I do want to move and connect with Patricia. Patricia is an actress and founder of the Wayutaya Foundation. Bienvenida, Patricia. Thank you so much for being with us today. Like Carlos said, and Amalia, I mean, we have a powerhouse panel right now about these issues of surrounding Venezuela, and really all of you are such amazing storytellers. But I want you to tell us a little bit more about your work, but also I think what I see in your work and how I understand it, as Carlos has kind of set the stage of some of the larger dynamics that are playing out in Venezuela, but also I'm really curious about, we can't just kind of present these really critical stories and not do anything with them. So I'd love to connect with you, talk about your work, and really also kind of share how it is that through your foundation and through your work, how is it that we're able to move people into action, and the importance of not just giving the stories, but moving them to do something and making people feel and understand that they can do something in this moment. So Patricia, bienvenida, and I'll hand it over to you.
So good to meet you, Jasmine. Well, I mean, obviously I have to thank you and thank Hispanics in Philanthropy. It was wonderful how I've been meeting. First I met Hilda and then Amalia, and you guys really do extraordinary work. It's something that I personally look up to, as one day as an organization be able to move just like you guys move. In this case, not only all Hispanics people, but just in general, just to get straight to the heart of the people, to go out and really take action. It's an honor, Ana, and of course, Amalia, Venezuelan, and Lala in Colombia. I do have to say, Carlos, watching your video, wow, it makes me, I'm a big fan of your work, so with Lala, but when I just looked at that video, it kind of, obviously, I think it made us cry, and I want to put you in my pocket and take you to the Wayu village, because that's part of being effective, is to unify, start looking at other people as a team where we work together. And that's one thing that I have learned through all this process of the situation in my country. Many years ago, we started this organization in New York. Just like Carlos said, I spent most of half of my life living in New York. I'm in Los Angeles now. And we started the Wayutaya Foundation. And then UNICEF classified the Guajira region as the second poorest in Latin America, where one kid was dying a day. So my mom is Wayu, and the Wayu community is the biggest indigenous community in South America. And it's a matriarchal society, so we're all very strong women. And we thought, if we can, because both of my parents are educators, so we thought if we can put a little preschool, that will guarantee that the kids will get 2 meals a day. And that's really how it all started. It came from a personal struggle of wanting to help really my community, and knowing that my mom had come from there, growing up without water and so many other things. And really that was the seed. Now we have over 3,500 kids in different schools, but currently, because of the situation, something really interesting has happened, which is the schools have become kind of like what churches used to be. Everything is happening in the schools. They've become the center of the communities. And as this, I don't know, there was a big article in the New York Times where it says that the latest data, only 5% of the schools have attendance in the country, except in Caracas. Our schools are full of kids. We can't keep up with the kids, and that is because life has kind of taken us to become the center of the community. But before I tell you a little more, maybe if you don't mind, if Hilda can just play, we're not going to play the whole video, but just a little bit of the first video of the foundation. So maybe so this way you can have a little bit of a visual background of what area we're talking about, which is right in the border between Venezuela and Colombia. So Hilda, if you don't mind, if we can just play a little bit of the first video. Oh, okay. It was the other one, but it was the other video.
Hold on, I'll get the other video.
No problem. We won't play the whole video, but the idea is to kind of give you a little bit of a background. So the Guayú region is right on the border between Venezuela and Colombia, and there are about 500,000 Guayú indigenous community from indigenous communities there, and this has become a very, very vulnerable area within the refugee crisis. But for us, it's the most, in terms of power and communication and taking action, what has been the most important is to give out a message. It's okay, we can leave this one, Hilda, no worries. It's to always go to the heart of the stories, and I'm sure this is something that Carlos and Lala try to do daily. The truth is, and look, we are here, there are problems everywhere. Our crisis is very important to us because we have all been affected by it. My brothers had to escape, my mom had to escape, and I related very much to the video that Carlos played because I too was one of these kids that wanted to take my family out and wanted my mom. We grew up without water, and I wanted my mom and my family to be able to have water. And so as I was blessed enough to be able to have some success, and I am one of the ones that have been blessed enough to be able to help the ones that are left back there. But the idea is I look at my mom, for example, she's here with me, she's 80, and there's nothing more painful to me that even though that I have been helping her and we've been able to help the family, she just wants to be home. And most of her families are separated. Venezuelans, I think by nature, we're not people that want to be out of our countries. But the truth is that we all have our problems, and we have to be able to give our message across in a way that doesn't, because we are dealing with our own issues every day, how can we make the person who's watching or the person who's listening to our problems, not only we have to get the information out there, but how can we make it so they take action and they make it feel that is something that is personal, and then they take action by helping through our foundations, and really it's just by make it personal, by making it honest, and also kind of by designing a plan. Because there's one more thing, and I'm sure Lala and Carlos can talk about this. It is the people, when you create a team and people are motivated to go out, and in this case we're giving food, we're giving medical attention, we're giving education, and by that a lot of people will not leave. So the school attendance is higher, people are not leaving, and we concentrate everything in the schools. But how can we make you take action? And how can we also help the team? One of the big things that we encounter every day as a part of a foundation is a lot of the things that you do and every step that you take might cause retaliation. And our team has experienced this on a daily basis. If I say something that is not in agreement with the political, or if it's something obviously that the regime or doesn't like, then they retaliate on the team. So really we depend on on the help that we can give to each other, but at the end it's really about the teamwork. So there are a few things that we do, and this is how we can get the message across. And the first thing that we do is that we're learning as we're going. Number one. And we keep everyone safe. If we know that if people are about to give a message, or they're about to do something that is going to be hurtful to them, then we take them out. Very important is to listen. We listen to the team, and we also listen to the person that is in this case, who's going to donate. If we have, let's say, if we have we design a path, we select a plan, then we collect, and then we say, okay, now we're going to share, and we're going to plan how we're going to spread all this news. If there is something that we think that is going to be harmful, then we wait. Very important also that we highlight all the work of our partners. We show what the team work, and especially we tell personal stories from every angle. Like if there is, it's very important to listen to the teachers. It's important to tell the stories of the kids that are being helped. It's very important to tell and show the work that the members are doing. And we only show hope. And I want to make just a little a point about hope, because again, I mean, I'm in LA. We know what we are experiencing all around the country. We are at a moment where we are all experiencing problems, and problems might be very high. And like, for example, here, there's this feeling of guilt that we all get every once in a while. We're in a house, this is really beautiful, people back at home, they don't have food to eat, or now we're in lockdown, and I think of people that are somewhere in a room and they can't get out, and there's this feeling of guilt. That is something we try to stay away with, and try to just empower the people that we're working with, but we're also empowering the people that want to help. Because if you do it out of guilt, then it causes rejection. If you show images that show too much poverty and not hope, that causes rejection. So how do we do it? We do it by empowering our leaders, empowering our people to become leaders, and also empowering the people that are watching. In this case, you're watching us, to empower you so you can become a leader and you can help us do the work. And we make it personal. Every situation that we encounter in life is just as valid. It doesn't matter where you are. And we have been fortunate enough to have created credibility, have become a conduit of helping in the country. We're bringing food, medical attention, education for over 12,000 people daily. And it's a struggle. And obviously we are not getting as much help as other crises are, but it's our job and it's our pleasure to do it, because it is something that is very personal. And the more we create and we can bring out this message in a way that is simple, that is honest, that is credible, and that it motivates you to take action based on honesty, then it will grow, and we will be able to bring more help and help more children. I honestly didn't really prepare anything for today, other than I just wanted to talk to you guys about honesty and about letting you know that if you're watching, you're just as important. Everyone is important. Everything that you do matters. Any little action that you take is just as valid. People sometimes have the tendency we have the tendency to believe, oh, okay, well, maybe I don't have enough money to help, or I don't believe it. The most important help is the teamwork. If you are someone that can help with computers, wow, that's a tremendous help. If you can take photographs, that's tremendous help. And I can tell you, try to help. Can you please help us as a foundation? No, I will tell you, find what is the cause that is important to you. And because it's important to you, then honesty will come out, and then you will take action. And always ask yourself, why? Why am I doing this? Why is it important to me? And that will motivate you to take action that will then change lives. The crisis in Venezuela, there are not enough words to tell you. There are not enough images to show what is really going on. But the only thing that we can do is work and create and show hope. Show hope of what we think it could be a better future by trying to create a better present. But we cannot really do it alone. So if this is something that speaks to you, fortunately, we are creating and we're learning, we're creating a path so we can then bring the help, which it is very difficult. But just like Amalia said at the beginning, Amalia, you have a problem sending the money because of your family, because of the restrictions. Please, let's talk, because we can help you get the money there. There are ways, and that's amazing. We have so much imagination as human beings. So when we get together, communicate, don't isolate. Don't isolate, just talk about, and you will be surprised how you can then create help for that problem, which is the one you have, that then will multiply in
Come in, mamita.
there. So yeah, that's it. Is your daughter there?
Yes, sorry about that. I thought I was on mute, but I'm so sorry.
No, I don't want to take over my time as well. So
no, you're okay. You're okay.
I just wanted to thank our partners and just, I think we can bring it back to you. Just thank you so much for giving me the opportunity, and then we can answer some of the questions because I don't want to run over my time.
No, thank you so much, Patricia. And I think, I've been taking notes as you were talking, Carlos was talking, so I'm going to come back as we get kind of to the Q&A session. But I think two of the things that you said so well is that you take the time to listen, right? And so, and that's part of the conversation as storytellers and as narrative builders, is that we're actually listening to what the community needs. We're actually listening to what the person needs in the story that they need us to tell, and making sure that we're not coming in with a set agenda, which I know nobody on this panel does, in terms of like, this is the story we're going to tell so that we can get really money donated. But it's really focusing on, this is the story that we need to tell based on their understanding or based on their experience, and building off of that, and then empowering the people to understand that their story is incredibly important. And it's worth listening.
Yeah, one more thing. As I see that your daughter is there, show her to us. Oh my goodness. Hola. Oh my, she's precious. What's your name? Hello?
Citlali, ¿cómo te llamas?
Oh my God. I mean, that so beautiful. One of the things that I believe, and as I see her, as a mother, I'm also a mom. One of the things I believe is so important is, within our mission in the foundation is to improve the lives of Indigenous communities, respecting their cultures and beliefs. And many times we have an agenda. We try to help a community, and we just want to have, our point of view. But when you listen, you empower your leaders to become leaders, and then you empower also the person who wants to help to be a leader, to help us get that work done. And respect is the key to it. What happens when you are in a very challenging situation? They say, I don't know how many weeks it takes for somebody who maybe who had been very successful to then become a homeless, to change the mind and get the mind of a homeless. It just takes a few weeks. And I see it with even my brothers. I see it with some of my own family, how they have been tremendously successful. And because of the situation, you start kind of getting used to it. You get used to live in poverty. You get used to live being told what to do. You just get used to it. And it is the number one message that we have to bring out, is just don't get used to it. Don't forget. Yeah. Know that you have rights, and know that you can go out there. And because these food, medical attention, education, freedom, those are basic rights of any human being. And we get used to being dominated or living with less. I think our biggest job as people that are living in freedom and are living in, with basic human rights covered, is to make sure we remind, anytime we see that we're losing that right, or we're losing those basic things, we have to remind them that we cannot forget.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that actually is a perfect segue into Lala. So Lala Lovera is the director of the Fundación Comparte por una Vida in Colombia. Bienvenida, Lala. Thank you so much for being with us today. Exactly, Patricia, as you were saying, the importance of almost like there's a trauma, right, that exists as people are going through this, and rightly so. But Lala, I know that part of your storytelling work as well is cross-border healing with stories, right? So I'd love to come over to you to share a little bit more about the work that you're doing on the ground and give us that perspective, but also really what does that healing look like through storytelling, and how do we kind of put our subjects at ease so that we can continue telling that story in a powerful way, and at the same time, like Patricia said, empowering them to think differently and think of what's possible.
Great, thank you very much. First, thank you everybody. Thank you, HipGive, for all the support I have given us. And it's an honor to be here with this wonderful people from Venezuela and around the world. And first I'm going to share my screen because I just want to tell you some stories, and then I will come back to me. Today I walk 6 miles. Just today too. This is what I walk every day. 3 hours to get to school. I was not enough to buy some food. I have no money. I'm 12 years old. My mom doesn't know that a man was robbing me. My little brothers and I went from house to house looking for food. A lady gave me a job in a pizzeria, cleaning disgusting bathrooms. Living is very, very hard. I put my dreams and hope inside a backpack. I have nothing. I sleep in tobacco bags. They call me a warrior. What makes me a warrior? To live? I haven't studied in a year because I'm from Venezuela. I want to be a lawyer. I want to have several careers in order to be someone. I want to be a forensic doctor. I love learning. I don't want to stop doing it. I've been afraid, very afraid. I pray, I pray, I pray. I ask God, why me? I want to see the world one day. I dream of sponsoring children. My only shoes are broken. It's hard to move sometimes where you can't see a future. I pray, I pray, I pray. So, I'm Lala Lovera. I was born in Caracas, Venezuela. And I love to call myself a citizen of a world that must unite. I'm a mother of 2 persons who have been my teachers. And I thank to them every day because I understood that being a mom of 2, you're the mom of the whole world and the whole children. So my job here is to serve. It's like a passion, okay? So I'm going to try to summarize who am I and how I arrived to all those phrases and all those faces that you just seen. So I started special education in Caracas, and then I moved back to Bogota with my family in 2011. And I fall in love with Colombia. I started working on a wonderful place called La Casa de la Madre y el Niño as a volunteer. And this is a wonderful place for adoptions. And I understand the importance of family, of giving the rights of children to be loved by a parent. And also we support the pregnant woman who decided to give a child to a family that just wants to fall in love with the children. So in that way, I fall in love with Colombia and the ways of Colombia to reach these children. So being there, working with the direction and doing this wonderful job with children. In 2017, we started like 3 years ago, where the migration crisis in Colombia started like a bomb because it changed, and we start seeing our children walking, and we started seeing our young people walking. And when we arrived, well, we were leading some volunteer work to support the NGOs, as Patricia's NGOs and another NGOs in Venezuela, to send some food. We went to Cucuta, to the border between Venezuela and Colombia, and we realized that there were almost between 8,000 and 12,000 children walking every day in order to go to school. As Patricia said, schools around the border just turned to be like the safest place for them. These children were walking miles and miles, 6, 8, back and forth every day for hours, just to feel safe, just to be in a school, because they think that's a good thing to do. So then we started as a team, and I will grab Patricia's word. We started as a team. This is a teamwork. We can't do it alone. The governments can't do it alone, the NGOs, the civil society, but we need to grab all these stories and make them us move. So we started working with the civil society and started raising these voices. I think that's what I'm here, because I need to raise all these voices. That it's not one story, it's not two stories. We're talking about 1 million voices of children that are trying to survive, and they have the hope that going to school is going to change their reality. And we can't tell them that it's not that. So we decided with my group and my team to found here and in Colombia Comparte por una Vida Colombia, which has born in Venezuela in 2016. Ana Isabel Otero, which is a wonderful leader, and from a girl moving all these people around the world to help hospitals and schools in Venezuela. So we just grabbed the name and we asked her, let us do it here in Colombia so we can help Colombia address this big issue that wasn't prepared for this massive migration. And let's start transforming these lives. So let's start telling these little guys that are crossing the border with this hope that yes, of course, we can raise your voice around the world and tell the world we can do this. And let's help Colombia to get the way it has to be. So for us, these children have no flag, no color. So we just grab them around with these nutritional programs, because as Patricia said, food is the main necessity. And food is the first thing that they have been wrapped and they stole their dignity around food. So we try to get them back. So we start working in this huge school in the border in Cucuta, which is called La Frontera. It's almost 1,800 children, which 80% of these children lives in Venezuela, and they go back and forth. So just imagine this. And, but they're from Venezuela or from Colombia. But the big thing is that we don't want them, that their hope and stories, that I want to be a forensic doctor, I want to be a biologist, I want to be a nurse. We need to tell this story. Every little face that you see there, they have their story. And as Patricia said, we can't normalize this. And they have normalized the trocha pass, which are the illegal roads where they go. They start normalizing the illegal. I'm pretty sure, Carlos, you know your work. You have seen it's the guerrilla in one side, the other side of these colectivos. It's a really rough place for children. They have been abused. They have been disappeared. They are part of the micro traffic of drugs in their backpacks. They're part of that. And we refuse to get comfortable with this. We refuse to stop telling their stories. We refuse to tell them, okay, that's okay. So you have to do that in order to go to school. So that's why we need this storytellings. That's why we need our voices to get them around the world. We know that there's a lot of problems, and right now we're facing it around the world. But we need to understand that this is the future of Latin America. We don't see if this is a flag from one country on another. We have to stop feeling comfortable because I can't do anything. I don't have that. That's typical that what Patricia said. I don't have that amount of money to help you. No, we need your voice. We need you to understand more than your money. Of course, we need money, and we need partners, not money. We need partners. We need bridges. We need to build these bridges to get into this transformation and models of transformation in order of get these lives going on. So we need these stories, and we can't stop telling them. We need to continue telling. We can't get used to. I need you, all the people that are watching us, and people who knows me, and people who has been following our work. They know that I won't get used. I won't get comfortable. I need you to get uncomfortable. I need you to get really, really, like, I don't know. It's terrible what is happening. So in the moment that you start getting comfortable with the stories, we need to change them and start looking for new voices. So in order to help, we need voices, we need philanthropists, we need children advocacy, we need everybody here. So it's like creating these bridges. And I also, when I saw Carlos' clip, I was crying again. So, and I think when I stop, if I see Carlos' story, or if I hear Samalia's stories, or Patricia with her grandmother, and I don't feel uncomfortable, I have to stop my job. Because this is a reality that has touched all Venezuelans. I have also my mom in Venezuela, I have my sister in Venezuela, I have my grandmother in Venezuela, and I don't know where I'm going to see her again. Now, I don't know if the COVID will allow us to get a next hug or something, but we need to tell these stories. We need to get people to hear us, and in the correct way. I don't know, I'm pretty sure they're not the prettiest stories that everybody wants to hear, but it's our responsibility to get them and to raise the voice for these children. Every time I hear one of our children saying, I want to be a doctor, it's powerful. It's powerful because it makes me move, and it makes me to get like a virus for my friends, for the people who follows me. I have this responsibility to not only to tell mine as a migrant, but to tell them, to tell their stories to the world. So I think it's one of the biggest responsibilities that we have, respecting our children, of course, respecting their lives, but we need to tell their stories. So that's what HIP also has been a wonderful tool for Comparte por una Vida Colombia. We have been participating in all the crowdfundings. We have been inviting our people, and it has been a wonderful tool for us to tell what we are doing. Because this is something that, as I told you, we have to continue telling this story, because this is something that has changed Latin America, Venezuelans, Colombian, Peruvians, Ecuador, and this is happening. So that's my goal. So let's get uncomfortable and start talking and raising their voices.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lala. And you brought up a good point. The moment we stop feeling uncomfortable, there's something wrong, right? The moment that we can no longer feel that pain and that anguish, and also that fire to do something, then there's something happening. So thank you so much. What you said, I think, just really resonates with this moment. And I think also just all of you sharing your personal stories and how it's impacting all of you has been incredibly powerful today as well. I want to come with Ana Avendaño, who is the president of Minga, who does really, really incredible work around worker justice and telling the stories of workers. So bienvenida, Ana. Thank you so much for joining us. I'd love to really hear from you as well in terms of, with your work, how is it that stories really kind of help tell the stories of the workers that you work with? How do you elevate, and really center their stories around their experiences to be able to find meaning, and as Patricia was saying and Lala is saying, to really empower them to kind of envision a better future So bienvenida, Ana, and I will turn it over to you.
Muchas gracias. Thank you, everybody, and thank you to HIP and the stellar panel. It's been very moving and inspiring to hear of your work and just how important what you're doing is. I am a Chilean immigrant. My family was refugeed after the coup d'etat in 1973. I grew up in Canada and later in the States. And as an immigrant, I am from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. And I have always, other than my family, my three sisters, my grandmother who lived with us her whole life, and my parents, what has always grounded me and kept me honest is the connection to working people. I have been a lifelong worker advocate. I have been a represented workers in the context of my career inside the labor movement and working with immigrant workers in the United States and around the world. I want to just talk briefly about one particular set of workers to show you my experience of the power of storytelling. As Amalia raised earlier, COVID has exposed the vulnerabilities of essential workers, workers who don't have the choice of staying home, as many of us do, but have to go out and work in these dangerous circumstances today. But I just want to remind us that these vulnerabilities were not created by the current crisis. They've long predated the crisis. These are structural inequalities, inequities that were man-made. And I want to focus today on domestic workers because their movement, their plight, I think is a wonderful example of how storytelling reaches hearts and minds, as we've heard from the other speakers, but it also has this tremendous potential to change systems, structures, to eradicate poverty and injustice so that we don't have to keep fighting the same fight every day. So just to focus on domestic workers, I don't know, it is not generally known that domestic workers have not been traditionally considered workers at all. Domestic workers, along with farm workers, are excluded from protections of labor laws, not just in the United States, in most countries around the world. So they don't have any laws that protect their wages, hours, or didn't have any laws that protect wages, hours, and working conditions. And again, that was the result of structures. The New Deal legislation in the United States intentionally excluded domestic workers and farm workers from the protection of law as a concession to white Southern Democrats who did not want to give protections to these groups of workers who were predominantly Black, Latino, and Asian. And as a result, domestic workers have been among the most vulnerable workers around the globe. Yet, they have been organizing for decades. And they have been organizing by sharing their stories, by building power through storytelling. In the United States, domestic workers have been organizing through worker centers around the country, and in 2007, at the US Social Forum, they formed the National Domestic Workers Alliance. Globally, the same type of organizing had been going on for decades, and in 2010, domestic workers were able to raise the issue of workers' rights at the International Labor Organization, the United Nations body that creates and enforces international labor laws, international employment laws, the laws that protect workers globally. And so where I was working at the time, which was the American Federation of Labor, which is the umbrella organization for labor unions in the United States, it is the organizations that represents workers at the United Nations, at the ILO, which is a tripartite system. So governments have a voice, employers have a voice, and workers have a voice through trade unions. In 2010, we brought the Convention for Domestic Workers is on the agenda, and I was the US worker representative for that effort, and we brought with us domestic workers from Mujeres Activas Unidas in San Francisco, and a domestic worker named Juana Flores was actually my deputy. As we were building international law on what standards domestic workers, what standards would protect the rights of domestic workers, Juana and I were sitting side by side in a small committee of 6 people that were drafting this, what became Convention 189. So for days, we negotiated with employers and government representatives of what kinds of protections should be in the law. And as lawyers came up with an idea, Juana would tell us, in consultation with the other domestic workers that were part of the process, would tell us exactly how that one provision that all of the lawyers had come up with just wasn't going to work, because she would explain to us exactly how the ama de casa, the head of the household, was going to get around that. And we learned so much from having an actual domestic worker at the table, sharing her stories of her life, her knowledge, her expertise, and her sisters. There were hundreds of domestic workers at the convention who every day they walked in the room singing a song, sharing their stories, reaching out to government representatives, negotiating with employers, with trade unions on their own terms, based on their stories, sharing their life experiences. And so for 2 summers, the ILO took up this issue, and in June of 2011, adopted Convention 189, which was the first recognition, global recognition of domestic workers as workers, of their rights that are now enshrined in law. And countries around the world are adopting this convention into their own national laws. Domestic workers now have rights under US law that they've never had before. This transformation came about because domestic workers themselves were the experts at the table, sharing their stories in powerful, meaningful ways. And what I loved about doing this work was that storytelling was the key to getting there, was the key to highlighting the fact that workers are agents of change, that they are the experts. And I think that philanthropy in this realm, and they won. I mean, I think this is something really important to highlight, that workers, when they share their stories, when they organize, when they work towards systems change, they do win. Even the most vulnerable, when they come together around the world. And I think that what I learned from this experience, one of many, many things, is that philanthropy has an incredibly powerful role to play here in lifting up the voices, in empowering workers to be able to share their stories. This is how, in my view, system change happens. So I can give you examples of workers accomplishing just super meaningful change, but I wanted to just share the story of domestic workers because I think it's emblematic. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's so interesting because I think we've actually seen some really powerful campaigns that have come out of the National Domestic Workers groups. I know that they're also, like the Families Belong Together also came out of some of the National Domestic Worker work that was happening across the country. I actually got arrested in DC with a lot of national domestic workers, probably now like 10 years ago. And I remember sitting actually while we were in jail together and hearing the stories of the women of why they were there. Because a lot of them were predominantly Latina immigrant women. And everybody was really captivated. You had activists, you had a whole, probably about 100 national domestic workers. And we just sat around them and just listened and cried together. And we just felt like so in the moment together. And so exactly what you're saying, you know, even our most vulnerable, when we come together, we have the power to be able to affect change collectively. And I think you're absolutely right. The role of philanthropy is really to be able to empower our communities to share their stories and to get, obviously, to move philanthropy to be able to support the sectors in every way that we can. So thank you, Anna, so much for your examples and for the work that you're doing. It's definitely something that we've seen play out for years now, the power of the stories that are coming out from the national domestic workers and just worker justice in general. So thank you so much. So with that, I want to actually get to some of the questions that have been coming in from the folks who have joined us today, because they're really actually dynamic questions, and there's just some of the issues around storytelling, you know, whether it's the ethics of storytelling, whether it's how do we not fatigue our audiences. I know if folks are looking for a resource in terms of how is it that we can empower our individuals to tell our collective story, Marshall Gantz's framework around the power of narrative, the power of the story of self, us, and now is a really phenomenal framework in terms of how you're able to move an individual from identifying what their story is to building it to a larger collective movement and a larger collective framing, whether it's a value-based framing or an action-based framing. But that for me is probably one of the most powerful storytelling tools that we have available. And I think it's something that we can share in the Slack channel later today in terms of how is it that you can use that framework as an advocate, as an organizer, as an executive director, as a communications specialist, or just as a journalist, whatever field you're in. It's just a really powerful framework in terms of being able to really balance out the heart and the mind and the call to action all together and putting it into a larger framework of the possibility of the future that we can create, right? So I want to, if it's okay with the moderators, I actually want to go into some of the questions that have come in because I think they're really powerful. And I want to start with one in Spanish. Creo que todos hablamos poquito español. Voy a hacer la pregunta en español, and then I'll do it in English because we're Latinos and we can go back and forth. Pero la pregunta dice, cuando sienten que la narrativa agota a la audiencia, o peor, genera efectos adversos como xenofobia o ataques de las otras poblaciones vulnerables, ¿qué hacen, right? So how does one know when a particular narrative begins to fatigue an audience, or worse, create an adverse effect such as xenophobia or attacks on vulnerable communities? And thank you, Julian, for sending us this question. But I want to start, Anna, I'm actually going to start with you because I think you have a history of doing some of this larger narrative work. And then I want to go with Carlos and Lala and Patricia as well. So Anna, you know, in your experience, what do you do as you're trying to see if there's an audience fatigue or if there's a backlash around like xenophobic attacks or an attack on the community?
I think that the most important thing is to highlight victories, highlight wins, even though they're tiny. I think that empowers people to keep going and empowers also those of us who are supporters in whatever way we can support to continue to support. Sometimes problems seem just too big to handle. Like I cannot change the world by myself. So I need to know that what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to support, or who I'm trying to advocate on their behalf is actually moving and towards something. And so I think that just recognizing that even within the most difficult circumstances, human beings are incredibly resilient and can accomplish monumental victories in their lives that may seem small to us, but to them it makes a big difference. And I also find that in dealing with xenophobia, because I do a lot of work with immigrant communities, bringing everything back to the humanity, the dignity of the self, of the people that we're talking about. So a lot of these, a lot of the discussions often tend to sort of diverge into policy or ideological discussions. When we bring it down to the worker, to the person, to the family, to the child, to the mother, that's what moves people in my experience and moves them to action. So that's just my own experience.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you so much, Anna. And Carlos, you know, I want to also bring it back to you because I think also as journalists, even the times that we're seeing right now where there's even like an attack on actual journalism right now, right? But how is it that you, in your stories, is it, you know, do you build kind of the counter narrative as you're building out your, you know, the stories that or the videos that you're producing? How is it that you're kind of trying to keep the perspective as well in terms of anticipating what that might be?
Well, and I'll try to be concise over here because it's just a topic. Talking about journalism, communications, and telling stories is you can spend hours over here. Basically, I mean, we do have such a thing as news cycles, right? And it also depends on the outlets that I've worked for. I've been lucky enough to have worked for, name the outlet, and I've probably worked with them. And I've been lucky enough that American-based news outlets allow me to find different angles in, from stories coming from Venezuela, right? So when touching the news cycle alone will push you to look for different angles and different stories, humanizing and not just going off of what Anna was talking about and what I was talking about earlier, not leaving everything just to numbers and statistics, right? So to answer the main question, when it comes to story fatigue, I don't think that we'd be, as a journalist and working with news outlets, I don't think I would be allowed to tell the same story over and over, which is why you look for different angles, because every single person that you talk to will have a different story. So when you make it personal, when you make it deep, when you connect, when you go from that very personal story and then you zoom out to make it universal and relatable, that's when my job as a journalist, I feel it's done. Always trying to keep this balance between what some people call activists or activism journalism and what I feel it's completely unbiased point of view. Again, I'm Venezuelan, so I'll always look for that. I don't think that's a fault. And I've had different talks with managing editors about this. I think that allows me just to dig deeper into stories and present different points of view. I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't want to. I feel like everybody over here can give such a great answer. I want to keep everybody from giving.
Well, and I think that's a great answer. And I know for us in our work at HIP, when we're trying to build out campaigns or work with partners, we will anticipate the counter narrative to try to prepare messaging as well to combat what's coming, whether it's a xenophobic attack or whatever it might be, so that we have messaging prepared to be able to kind of pivot the conversation, right? If it takes us in that direction, or in terms of audience fatigue, I know, and I don't know, Lala and Patricia, with the foundation work that you do as well, at least we found for us that we have to give people a very clear action in terms of what to do next, right? So with audience fatigue, kind of like what we talked about earlier, we don't just want to portray the story and just leave people hanging with that emotional thread, right? But really being able to say, if you give us $10 today, your $10 will go to X, Y, and Z. That's all it takes. Click the button. And so we're able to move people quickly into action so that they don't remain in the fatigue. But Lala, Patricia, I don't know, based on your work as well, if there's anything that you do specifically to be able to counteract that fatigue.
Lala, do you want to go first? Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
okay.
I hear you. No, go ahead. I'm pretty sure we can wrap out around the answer. So
yeah, perfect. For me, it comes. I have to look at it from 2 points of view, because I am a little bit on the public eye from being an actor. So there is what comes to me, and then how to separate it from the actual work of the foundation and how they don't cross each other, especially because the work we're doing, there is so much of the politics involved in the country, and so sometimes it's more like I have to be very careful and that one doesn't cross to the other side. The foundation has to stand for itself. And as you were saying before, Jasmine, we cannot see the future, but we can tell stories of what's happening now and what's our vision of how do we see this future, right? How do we see it? So based on that, then we try to make a plan. And so one of the things I have, because we make that plan and then we go and then we collect the stories. Then we collect the stories, we share the stories, but we have to plan how to share those stories. And many times, because of what we do and in relationship to what Lala was saying before, I've been in the border, I've been on that bridge speaking to those kids from the school of La Frontera, and I've heard them. You know, one of them was with his grandma, and they walk 5 kilometers every day to come to the Colombian side to go to La Frontera school, so they can, and they stay all day. But they stay all day because they're also having 2 meals a day. And then the grandma gets to eat as well, and she goes with him back and forth every single day. And the weekends are hard for them because they don't get the food because they're on the other side. So when we do the work becomes very emotional. And this is, and when you are on that side, meaning the people that are on the field that become your team, there's nothing more. It's a very empowering for us what we're doing right now, but it's even more empowering for them that are in the field with the struggle, that they wake up and there's no electricity, or and they can be the leaders that bring the food and that empowers them. So it becomes very emotional. And sometimes those emotions might get them to share some things that then they can either cause retaliation, or on the long run are not as positive, and might actually be very positive, but might be better to just maybe hold on a little bit and wait a few days so we can talk about it when you get back or in a few days, because it will create more results. So our work for being here is to see, okay, we have the stories, we put them here, how are we going to share them, how are we going to plan the spreads of these stories, and also to empower the team to collect the stories by guiding them, but also making sure that the responses, they have to be obviously honest, empowering, but they cannot be shared in an emotional way. I don't know if I'm making myself understood. It's just, we all want to share what we're doing, but sometimes it's like, okay, hold on. I know you want to go. It's like when I'll give you an example. We're crossing, and I can talk about it now because we have the way we started bringing in the food. It came from Acceso and the Clinton Foundation and World Central Kitchen. We started literally smuggling the food through Las Trochas. Every single week we will bring a truck, and then it started growing until it was just too much food. So what are you so excited when you get you get to the school with the food that you're going to share it? But what about this? You're feeding 3,000 people at that moment with that truck, but if you share it, it's going to help. It's going to hurt the people, because then you might get detained. So wait, let's hold on. We will share it, but let's evaluate how is it going to impact, and when are we going to use the fact that you're risking your life to bring the food to then create more income, so we can then have a much bigger impact, and it doesn't hurt you as a team. So yeah.
Thank you so much. We have another question from Sharon Bissell, who said, how do you position stories within a context of information overload? Do you have audience priorities, and how do you differentiate content?
You want me to answer? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Lala.
Perfect. So wrapping around both questions, I think the most important thing that our team and we understand when we're working with this lot of information every day in Colombia, every day in all the borders from Venezuela, we have huge information. So the first thing that my team and I we put on the table when we have all these stories is pasión. So we have to see each story with pasión, and also we need to get in the field, as Patricia said. We need to get in the field. So my team, we are a field passionate. So we love to go there. We love to be. So if our children are crossing the trocha and they're coming to me with a trocha information, and the news is they're talking about the trocha, and the teacher is talking about the trocha, and my I don't know, my board members are asking me, what is a trocha? We go to the trocha. Because if we are going to be responsible of telling their stories, we need to know their story from the beginning, from them. So we need to move and to go there. It's hard, I know. It's dangerous, I know. But it's the commitment that we have with this people, with these children, for example, in our foundation. We have the responsibility to tell their stories as they are and to fill them with passion. So also, our team understand that it's not about us, the story. It's not about Lala, it's not about Gilberto, it's not about Edith. No, this is about them, about their situation, about their own hopes and dreams and their own reality. So we need to understand that. It's not about Comparte por una Vida, it's not about Lala, or about, no, there's no queens or kings here. The stories have to be about them, and that's why we need to respect. Also, we need to connect through trust. It's so important to get your audience, whatever it is, to trust you. And if you keep your passion, your responsibility, if you're in the field and you know how to communicate this and about them, you get to build this trust. So about audiences, it's been so hard with my board members, which I really admire, and every day I tell them that they are our teamwork, because they are the guys who keeps and help us to keep the focus, okay, of all, because being there, and we all know that working in the field, we see that everybody needs us, but we need to have a focus. So our focus are our children, and that's what our board members keep us telling us. But also, it's like the audiences, you have to have a communication team, as Patricia just said. You need to bring those stories, their stories, and put them again on the table and see what are we going to tell and why. So every time, every story will help you build a huge story of your mission, of your passion. So you can't do it alone, as we were saying that. I think we commute all together in the same thing. So bring a wonderful communication team. You can have volunteers, or you can have a company, or you can fundraise for have a wonderful strategic communication team. And in that way, you will know your audience and you will know how to bring the same story to each one of them. But just, I think, it's passion. And about xenophobia, I think we have to understand, and that's why we're talking, and that's what I said in the beginning, that we don't see the flags or colors or nationality in our children. We try to integrate them. And also, thanks to that COVID, if we have something to thank the virus and the pandemic, it's that we are raising our voice, that migrants, they need to be integrated in every society that they are, because the virus is not deciding which nationality he's going to attack. So in order of that, we need to understand that we have a reflection of ourselves in every migrant. There's someone just like us, probably struggling like us. So that's a huge work that we are trying to do, of course, because it's in a country which is facing, just right now, Colombia is opening to this virus. It's opening to hunger because of the virus. But the only way to address this is to understand that me as Colombian or Peruvian or American, there's a migrant out there that is struggling like me, but has no house, no family around. So let's stop talking about flags or nationality. Colombia's this side, Venezuelan this side, food for you and not food for you, because that's only going to bring xenophobia. So our call from Comparte por una Vida and our team is to start talking to the local governments to stop segmenting these people. We have to integrate and address the COVID and the hunger that we're facing it. And in that way, so the good thing about the COVID is going to be the post-COVID, when everybody got to do their work and address some vulnerability through integration.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lala. Thank you. Thank you so much, Lala. Thank you, Ana, Patricia, Carlos. This has been a really fantastic panel, and I know we're going to be able to share some additional resources with everybody who was on today in terms of the power of storytelling, some recommendations, best practices. But I did want to thank you all so much for all the incredible work that you're doing, for taking the time to be with us today, and just really uplifting the stories of our communities and serving as a light in the moment as we're seeing everything. So thank you so much to our panelists. We really appreciate it. I'll also send some additional questions that we didn't get to answer today to the panelists. Hopefully, if you guys want to just write some responses, we can get those out to the folks as well. I did want to, introduce Hilda Vega from our team, who's our Deputy Director of Programs for Hispanics and Philanthropy, because I really want us to finish just in the power of storytelling. We don't do this, right? We don't leave you with just stories and then we jump off. But I really want us to walk through what are the next steps, right? What are the next steps for some of our work, specifically around Venezuela, specifically around migration, so that you all know what's coming out of HIP, but also ways to get involved and also how you can connect with us to learn a little bit more about storytelling. So I'm going to introduce you to Hilda Vega, who is on our team.
Thank you, Jazz. And I also just want to be sure to thank everyone who joined us today, Carlos and Mela and Patricia and Ana, and of course, Amalia and Jazz. This isn't just their job. We all do this with a commitment to our people and our communities, and to being examples of the kind of change that we want to do, not just when we're in an office setting, but also in our everyday lives. So I want to share my appreciation for them for joining us today and being themselves and being very personal about the work, because it is very personal. But yes, we do have some next steps, because as Joe said, this is not just a conversation that we have today and then we go on and la la la. For HIP, this conversation is part of our ongoing conversations about narrative change and what that means to reclaim narratives for Latino communities and our migrant communities. This is also part of our migration and forced displacement work, as Amelia mentioned. And through that work, as Lana knows as well, we do a variety of programs, and we have a crowdfunding platform, but we also do regranting. And so we have been working, as has been mentioned, to provide resources to organizations within our grantee pool to be able to help them address the impacts of COVID in their work. And we're also very excited to be able to soon officially announce another round of funding for migrant serving organizations in the region who continue to deal with the impacts of COVID in the midst of all of the different situations that we all know very well impacting migrants and refugees and asylum seekers across the region. And we know that this includes people who are awaiting notifications and applying for asylum to people in camps and in transit. And so this covers a lot of space and a lot of ground and a lot of situations. And in particular, we are very pleased to be able at this point in our programming to also extend this RFP to organizations specifically working with Venezuelan migrants. We are in the process of developing a fund that we're calling the Venezuelans Moving Forward Fund. And within that umbrella, we will be sharing more information very soon about a fund that, for at least for this first round, we hope to award about $100,000. Again, modest grants to organizations working with Venezuelans directly in situations across the region, Colombia, Brazil, Peru, Ecuador, US, Mexico in particular, to allow them to continue to do the critical work that they need and to keep themselves and their community safe. Like I said, we will be following up with all of the resources that we have shared today, and maybe a few others that are panelists or anyone else that would like to share along with everyone who's joined us. So thanks everyone for coming and sharing with us today and being a part of this conversation. We appreciate everyone's time, especially in these situations where we're all dealing with so many different impacts in our lives. And just want to also appreciate the partners and folks who I think are on the phone who also helped us organize this panel, but who were visible today. But they're always there with us and helping us and supporting us. So I encourage everyone to continue to look at our conference programming. You can join us in different ways if you want. Send me an email and let me know if you want to participate. It's not too late. And I wish everyone a really wonderful day, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you everybody who joined us, and we will be in touch soon. Gracias a todos.
Gracias.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Bye.